The space station floated quietly in the darkness. It was huge, like a small city hanging among the stars. Inside, thousands of beings from different worlds walked through its bright hallways. Some had fur, some had scales, and some looked like nothing anyone from Earth had ever imagined. Today was special. Delegates from more than 30 planets had come for the big summit. Minho stood near the main docking bay, checking his data pad one more time. He was 28 years old and had only been working at the station for 3 months. Before this job, he had been part of a search and rescue team back on Earth. He was good at staying calm when things got difficult. That was why Ambassador Hyun had picked him to greet the new arrivals. Ambassador Hyun was his boss. She was smart and careful, always thinking 3 steps ahead. She had told Minho this morning that today's guests were very important. The Valerians were coming and humans did not know much about them yet. Minho watched as the Valerian ship docked. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The first one to step through was massive. She was 7 feet tall with dark blue fur that had silver patterns painted on it. Her forearms moved with grace as she walked. This was High Matriarch Veltara, the leader of her people. Behind her came warriors and advisors, all tall and impressive. But Minho's attention was caught by 2 small figures trying to hide behind the matriarch's ceremonial robes. They were tiny, barely 2 feet tall, with soft silver blue fur and huge eyes. The cubs. Minho stepped forward and bowed his head, the way Ambassador Hyun had taught him. The matriarch's translator clicked and hummed before speaking in perfect English. Her voice was deep and powerful. I am High Matriarch Veltara of the Valerian Collective. We thank the human delegation for this welcome. It is our honor to host you, High Matriarch, Minho replied. I am Minho, aide to Ambassador Hyun. Please let me show you to your quarters. As they walked through the station, Minho kept his pace slow and steady. He could feel the cubs watching him. Every time he glanced back, they ducked behind their mother, but their bright eyes never left him. He found it amusing. Children were children, no matter what planet they came from. The group reached the diplomatic quarters. The doors opened to reveal a large suite adapted for Valerian needs. The matriarch inspected everything with her sharp gaze, then nodded her approval. You have done well, she said. My people will be comfortable here. Minho bowed again. As he did, he noticed the cubs had crept closer. They were standing just a few feet away now, staring up at him with fascination. One of them made a soft chirping sound. Minho smiled and gave them a small wave. The cubs' ears perked up. They chirped excitedly to each other, their tiny tails swishing back and forth. One of the Valerian attendants quickly ushered them away, but they kept looking back at him. Your cubs are very curious, Minho said carefully. Not sure if that was a compliment in Valerian culture. The matriarch's eyes softened slightly. Kira and Noru have never seen a human before. They find you interesting. You are tall when you stand, but you made yourself small when you bowed. This confuses them, Minho laughed. I never thought about it that way. They are young, the matriarch continued. Everything is new to them, but they have good instincts. They choose carefully whom to trust. Minho left the Valerians to settle in and returned to the main conference area. Ambassador Hyun was there, reviewing notes for the opening ceremony. How did it go? She asked without looking up. Very well. The matriarch seems pleased with the arrangements. Her cubs are adorable. Hyun finally looked up, one eyebrow raised. Adorable? Minho, those adorable cubs will grow into 7-foot warriors. Do not let their size fool you. I know. But right now they are just curious kids. The afternoon was busy with arrivals. Delegates from all over the galaxy filled the station. There were reptilian Krithari with their rainbow scales, the floating Dulvari who existed partly in another dimension, and the heavily armored Taraxians who never took off their combat suits. The opening ceremony began at sunset, station time. Everyone gathered in the Great Hall. Minho stood at the back with the other junior staff members, watching as the various leaders took their places. High Matriarch Veltara sat on a raised platform with her advisors. The cubs, Kira and Noru, were supposed to stay with their attendants in a side chamber, but Minho could see them peeking around the doorway, watching everything with wide eyes. The speeches started. Each delegate spoke about cooperation and peace. Minho tried to pay attention, but his mind wandered. He thought about his old job, climbing mountains to rescue lost hikers, searching through forests for missing people. This was different, but it required the same skills: patience, attention to detail, and staying calm. When the ceremony ended, Everyone moved to the reception hall. Food and drinks from dozens of worlds were laid out on long tables, the air filled with the sounds of different languages, translators humming and clicking as they worked. Minho grabbed a drink and stood near a viewing port. Outside, the planet below was beautiful, with blue oceans and white clouds. He was enjoying the quiet moment when he heard small chirping sounds near his feet. He looked down. Kira and Noru had escaped their attendants again. They stood beside him looking up with those huge, curious eyes. They chirped and gestured at the planet. "You want to see?" Minho asked. He knelt down, bringing himself to their level. "That is the planet we are orbiting. See those white things? Those are clouds made of water vapor, and the blue parts are oceans." The cubs pressed their small paws against the glass, chittering excitedly. They did not understand his words, but they seemed to enjoy his tone. Minho found himself smiling. It was nice to have someone appreciate the view with him. A worried attendant appeared and apologized profusely. The cubs protested with squeaks and chirps as they were led away, but they went without too much fuss. They looked back at Minho and waved their tiny paws. Minho waved back. Something about them reminded him of his niece back on Earth. The same endless curiosity, the same trust. He made a mental note to bring some Earth pictures next time he saw them. Kids liked pictures. As the evening wore on, the crowd began to thin. Tomorrow would be the first real day of negotiations. Minho was looking forward to the break. He had been on his feet for 12 hours. He had no idea that those two curious cubs would soon turn his life upside down. He had no idea that tomorrow he would become the center of the biggest crisis the station had seen in years. He had no idea that right now, as he walked back to his quarters, Kira and Noru were planning their great adventure. All Minho knew was that he was tired, the summit had started well, and the Valerian cubs were the cutest things he had seen in a long time. Everything seemed perfect. Tomorrow would be just another day of diplomatic meetings and careful conversations. Tomorrow would prove him very, very wrong. The morning started peacefully. Minho arrived at the conference hall early, carrying his data pad and a cup of coffee. The negotiations were scheduled to begin in an hour. Delegates were already arriving, their translators buzzing softly as they exchanged greetings. Ambassador Hyun was reviewing documents at the human delegations table. She looked up when Minho approached. "Good morning. Everything ready?" "Yes, Ambassador. All the materials are prepared." The Valerian delegation entered. High Matriarch Veltara moved with authority, her forearms carrying various ceremonial items. Her advisors followed, but Minho noticed the cubs were not with them. That made sense. This would be a long, boring day for children. The session began. Speaker after speaker discussed trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and resource sharing. Minho took notes, trying to keep up with the complex discussions. Hours passed slowly. It was just after lunch when everything changed. A Valerian attendant burst into the conference hall. Her fur was standing on end and she was breathing hard. She ran straight to the High Matriarch and whispered urgently. The matriarch stood up so quickly that her chair fell backward with a crash. The room went silent. Every delegate turned to look. "My cubs," the matriarch's voice came through her translator, tight with fear. "Kira and Noru are missing." The effect was immediate. Delegates began talking all at once. Ambassador Hyun stood up and called for calm. The station's security chief Jiwon was already on her communicator, her fingers flying over the controls. "When were they last seen?" Jiwon asked. 3 hours ago, the attendant replied, her voice shaking. "They were in their room playing. I left for just a moment to get their meal. When I returned, they were gone. 3 hours. Minho felt his stomach drop. In 3 hours, the cubs could be anywhere on the station. They could be in danger, trapped somewhere, or worse. Jiwon activated the station-wide alert system. Red lights began flashing in the hallways. An announcement echoed through every corridor in multiple languages. 2 Valerian cubs were missing. All personnel were to report any sightings immediately. The conference was abandoned. Every delegation offered help. Within minutes, search teams were forming. The Taraxians, with their advanced sensors, volunteered to scan the lower levels. The Krithari, whose eyes could see heat, would check the warmer sections. The Dulvari could phase through walls to check sealed areas. High Matriarch Veltara was transformed. The dignified diplomat was gone. This was a mother, terrified for her children. Her warriors assembled quickly, weapons ready, prepared to tear the station apart if needed. We will find them, Ambassador Hyun said firmly. The station is locked down. They cannot go far. But the matriarch's eyes were wild with worry. You do not understand. Valerian cubs are prey to many creatures on our world. They learn to hide when frightened. If they are scared, they will hide so well that no one can find them. Minho joined a search team assigned to the observation decks. He reasoned that curious cubs might want to look at the stars. He moved through the corridors quickly but carefully, checking every corner, every alcove, every space large enough to hide two small bodies. His old training kicked in. When searching for missing people, you had to think like them. The cubs were young, curious, and in a strange place. Where would they go? What would interest them? He checked the first observation deck. Empty. The second one had a few delegates, but no cubs. The third deck had a group of young beings from various species all playing a game, but no Valerians among them. An hour passed. Then 2. The search teams reported back regularly, but every message was the same. Nothing found. The station's computer system showed no sign of 2 small life forms moving independently. It was as if Kira and Noru had simply vanished. Minho's communicator buzzed constantly with updates. Other teams were checking cargo bays, maintenance shafts, even the air circulation systems. The Dulvari had phased through every sealed section. Nothing. He moved to the lower decks, checking recreation areas and storage rooms. His legs were starting to ache from all the walking, but he pushed the discomfort aside. 2 children were missing. His tired legs did not matter. At one point, he passed a mirror and caught his reflection. He looked worried, his brow furrowed with concentration. He paused for just a moment, taking a deep breath. Stay calm, he told himself. Panic never helped anyone. The 3rd hour began. Minho could hear the tension in every voice on the communicator. High Matriarch Veltara was personally searching the diplomatic quarters, calling her cubs names. The sound of her voice, speaking in her own language, was heartbreaking. Minho checked another corridor. Then another. He was starting to think about the impossible scenarios. What if there was a malfunction in the station's systems? What if an airlock had opened? No, that was ridiculous. The alarms would have sounded. He reached up to rub his tired neck. His hand touched something soft, something that definitely was not part of his uniform. He froze. Slowly, very slowly, his hand moved higher. Soft fur, a tiny paw, small claws gripping his jacket. His other hand went to his other shoulder. More fur, another paw. A small tail that wrapped around his neck like a warm scarf. Minho stood perfectly still in the middle of the empty corridor. His mind was racing. How long had they been there? 3 hours? Had they been on his shoulders this entire time? One of the cubs made a soft chirping sound near his ear like a question. Are you okay? Minho wanted to laugh. He wanted to cry. He wanted to sink to the floor in relief and embarrassment. He had been searching for the cubs for 3 hours. 3 hours, and they had been riding on his shoulders the whole time. He took a breath, then another. He needed to think carefully about what to do next. Hundreds of beings were searching the station. Emergency protocols were active, and the cubs were right here, had been here all along, perfectly safe and probably enjoying the adventure. How had he not noticed? They were so light. He had been so focused on the search that he never felt their small weight. They must have climbed up when he knelt to check a low corridor, probably in the first few minutes of the search. The cubs shifted slightly, their claws kneading his shoulders in a gentle, comfortable rhythm. They were not scared. They were not lost. They were exactly where they wanted to be. Minho reached for his communicator. His hand shook slightly. This was going to be an interesting conversation. Minho to Ambassador Hyun, he said quietly. I need to speak with you privately. It is urgent. There was a pause. Go ahead, Minho. What is it? He took another breath. Ambassador, I found the cubs. That is wonderful.
Where are they?
Are they safe? They are perfectly safe. They have been safe the entire time. He paused. They are on my shoulders. They have been on my shoulders for the last 3 hours. The silence that followed was very, very long. Ambassador Hyun's voice finally came through the communicator. She spoke carefully, each word measured. Minho, did you just say the cubs have been on your shoulders for 3 hours? Yes, Ambassador. I was searching and I never noticed them. They are very light and very quiet. Another long pause. Minho could imagine his boss's face right now. She was probably trying very hard not to laugh, scream, or both. "Do not move," Hyun finally said. "I will contact High Matriarch Veltara privately. We need to handle this carefully. Tell me your exact location." Minho gave his coordinates. He stood still, very aware of the two small bodies perched on his shoulders. The cubs seemed content. One of them was purring softly. The other's tail was still wrapped around his neck, warm and fluffy. "How do I tell them I know they are there?" Minho asked quietly. "Just stay calm. Cubs are sensitive to emotion. If you panic, they might panic too. Act like everything is normal." Minho tried to relax. Normal. Right. He was just standing in a corridor with two alien cubs on his shoulders, while hundreds of beings searched the entire station for them. Totally normal. He could hear the ambassador speaking to someone else in the background, her voice too quiet to make out words. Then she was back. "The matriarch is on her way to you." "I am coming too. There is a meeting room on your level, section B7. Walk there slowly and wait inside. Do not tell anyone else yet." Minho started walking. Every step felt strange now that he knew about his passengers. The cubs adjusted their grip with each movement, their small claws holding on gently but firmly. One of them chirped softly as if encouraging him. He passed a search team in the corridor. They nodded at him and hurried past, still looking for the cubs. Minho kept his face neutral. The irony was almost painful. The meeting room was small and private. Minho entered and the door closed behind him. He stood in the center of the room, still not sure what to do. Should he sit? Should he try to take the cubs down? Should he just wait? He decided to wait. The cubs seemed happy where they were. 5 minutes later, the door opened. Ambassador Hyun entered first, her face showing nothing. Behind her came High Matriarch Veltara with 4 of her warriors. The matriarch's eyes locked onto her cubs immediately. For a moment, nobody moved. The cubs chirped excitedly when they saw their mother. Their little tails wagged, but they made no move to leave Minho's shoulders. They were comfortable. Minho carefully knelt down, bringing himself lower. The matriarch approached, her forearms reaching out. She lifted Kira first, then Noru, holding them against her chest. Her hands moved over their bodies, checking for injuries, her eyes scanning every inch of fur. The cubs squirmed and chirped, trying to tell her about their adventure in their own language. The matriarch listened, her translator clicking and humming as it worked to interpret their excited baby talk. Then something unexpected happened. The High Matriarch began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that came from her chest. Her warriors looked at each other in confusion. Ambassador Hyun raised her eyebrows. Minho just stayed kneeling, waiting. The matriarch set her cubs down but kept one hand on each of them. She looked at Minho and her translator spoke. "You must understand something, human Minho. What my cubs did is not shameful. It is honored," Minho blinked. "Honored?" In ancient times, Valerian warriors would carry cubs on their shoulders during patrols. It taught the young ones to observe, to stay quiet, to learn patience. A cub who can ride unseen is a cub with great potential. She gestured at Kira and Noru, who were looking very proud of themselves. But more than that, a cub only chooses to ride with someone they trust completely. It is a declaration. They have named you in their own way as their guardian. Ambassador Hyun stepped forward. "High Matriarch, we apologize for the confusion and worry. Our aide did not know about this custom." "Nor did my attendants," the matriarch replied. "This tradition is old. Most cubs do not have the skill or the courage to attempt it anymore. That my children did so in a strange place with a being from another world tells me much." She looked at Minho again. "You have the spirit of a protector." My cubs sensed this. They were not lost. They were exactly where they wished to be. Minho slowly stood up. "I am honored by their trust. But I am very sorry I did not notice them sooner. So many people were worried." The matriarch's expression softened. "You were focused on your task. This is also a warrior's trait. When you hunt, you see only the prey. When you search, you see only the goal. My cubs are clever. They knew how to hide in plain sight." One of the Valerian warriors spoke to the matriarch in their own language. She nodded and turned back to the humans. "My aide reminds me that I must call off the search. The station is still in emergency mode." Ambassador Hyun activated her communicator. "This is Ambassador Hyun to all search teams. The cubs have been found. They are safe and unharmed. Stand down from emergency protocols. Thank you all for your assistance." The response was immediate. Dozens of voices expressed relief, asking for details. wanting to know where the cubs had been found. Hyun kept her answers vague. They were in a safe location the entire time. The High Matriarch is with them now. The matriarch knelt down to her cubs' level. She spoke to them softly in Valerian, her tone gentle but firm. Minho did not need a translator to understand. She was explaining why they could not wander off, even for adventures. Kira and Noru listened, their ears drooping slightly. But then the matriarch's tone changed. She ruffled their fur and chirped back at them. Their ears perked up again. She was not angry. She was proud. The matriarch stood and approached Minho. From somewhere in her robes she produced a piece of cloth. It was beautiful, woven with silver threads that caught the light. She draped it over Minho's shoulders where the cubs had been sitting. "This is a guardian's drape," she explained. "It is given to those whom cubs have chosen. Wear it when you wish to honor my children's choice. Wear it to remind yourself that you are trusted." Minho touched the cloth carefully. It was soft and warm. "Thank you, High Matriarch. I will treasure this." The cubs chirped and jumped up and down. They clearly approved of this gift. One of them tugged on Minho's pant leg, looking up at him with those huge eyes. He knelt down again and both cubs rushed forward to hug him. Their small arms barely reached around his neck, but the gesture was clear. Ambassador Hyun watched with a small smile. This was not how she had expected the day to go, but it was turning into something better than any planned diplomacy could achieve. The High Matriarch gathered her cubs. "Come, we must let the kind human rest. He has had a very long day, even if he did not know he was carrying passengers." As they left the room, Kira and Noru looked back at Minho and waved their tiny paws. He waved back, the guardian's drape still warm on his shoulders. When the door closed, Minho finally let himself sit down. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by exhaustion and a strange sense of wonder. Ambassador Hyun sat beside him. "That was well handled, Minho. I walked around for 3 hours with 2 cubs on my shoulders and never noticed. I'm not sure that counts as handling anything well." Hyun laughed. "You earned their trust. You stayed calm when you discovered them, and you just became part of an ancient Valerian tradition. I would say you did very well indeed." Minho looked at the drape on his shoulders. "Do you think anyone will believe this story?" "Oh, they will believe it," Hyun said with a grin. "And you will never live it down." She was right. But Minho did not mind. Some stories were worth being remembered for. By evening, the entire station knew what had happened. The story spread like wildfire through the corridors, changing slightly with each retelling. Some versions were accurate. Others were wildly creative. But everyone agreed on one thing. It was the strangest lost and found incident the station had ever seen. Minho tried to go about his duties normally, but everywhere he went, people stared. Some smiled. Some laughed quietly. A few congratulated him, though he was not sure what for. Surviving embarrassment, perhaps? The reaction from different species was fascinating. The Krithari, with their compound eyes that saw in multiple spectrums, found the whole thing incomprehensible. How could anyone miss 2 bright-furred cubs sitting on their shoulders? It seemed impossible to them. The Dulvari, who did not have children in the traditional sense, were confused by the entire concept of parental worry. They asked many questions about why the matriarch had been so distressed. When it was explained that young beings needed protection, they found it inefficient but interesting. The Taraxians, the warrior species, had the most unexpected reaction. Their commander sought out Minho personally. "Human." The Taraxian's voice came through his armor's speaker, deep and resonant. "You displayed excellent focus during the search. And the cubs showed remarkable stealth. Both are admirable traits." Minho was not sure how to respond to that. "Thank you, Commander. The young Valerians will make fine warriors one day. You should be honored they chose you." Security Chief Jiwon found the whole situation hilarious once the tension broke. She cornered Minho in the cafeteria. 3 hours, she said, grinning widely. "You walked around with 2 cubs on your shoulders for 3 hours." "I was focused on the search," Minho said defensively. "They are very light. Oh, I know. I have already updated all our emergency protocols. New rule. If someone goes missing, we scan everyone on the station, not just empty spaces. You have contributed to station safety, Minho. Congratulations." Minho could not tell if she was serious or teasing. Probably both. The diplomatic corps held an informal gathering that evening. Delegates from various worlds sat together, sharing food and stories. Minho attended reluctantly, knowing he would be the center of attention. He was right. As soon as he entered, conversation shifted. But to his surprise, the tone was not mocking. It was curious and respectful. A delegate from the Jovan Federation approached him. The Jovans were scientists, always studying and analyzing. Their representative had multiple data pads floating around her head. "We have been discussing your species," she said without preamble. "This incident has revealed interesting information about human capabilities." "What kind of information?" Minho asked carefully. "Your ability to focus. When humans commit to a task, you filter sensory input with remarkable efficiency. You can ignore discomfort, background noise, even additional weight. This is rare in the galaxy." Another delegate joined them. This one was from a species Minho had not met before. Tall and willowy with skin that seemed to shift colors. "We have also noted your endurance," the delegate said. "You walked for 3 hours carrying extra weight without tiring. Your species evolved as persistence hunters, yes?" "This explains much," a third voice joined in. This one belonged to a small furred being who looked like she belonged in a forest. "But the most interesting thing is the pack bonding. The cubs chose you instinctively. They sensed you would protect them. Humans form these bonds easily, even across species. This is very unusual." Minho found himself at the center of an impromptu academic discussion about humanity. It was strange and flattering at the same time. These beings were not laughing at him. They were trying to understand what made humans different. Ambassador Hune watched from across the room with satisfaction. This was turning into an opportunity. The incident had made delegates curious about humans. Curiosity led to understanding. Understanding led to better relationships. High Matriarch Veltara arrived late to the gathering. The room quieted when she entered. Everyone wanted to hear her perspective on what had happened. She went directly to Minho. "How are you feeling, Cub Carrier?" The nickname caught him off guard. "Cub Carrier? It is what my warriors have begun calling you. It is a term of respect among our people." Minho realized she was serious. What he thought would be an embarrassing nickname was actually an honor in Valerian culture. "I am honored, High Matriarch." She gestured for him to walk with her to a quieter corner. When they were away from the crowd, she spoke more personally. "I must tell you something. I was very frightened today. When I thought my cubs were lost, I felt helpless. But then I learned they were safe with you. That fear turned to relief, then to pride. Your pride is deserved. Kira and Noru are remarkable. They are. But what I mean is I am proud they chose wisely. They could have climbed onto anyone, but they chose you. Their instincts guided them to a protector. This tells me your species has depth we have not yet fully appreciated." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Before today, the Valerian Collective was uncertain about closer ties with humanity. You are new to the galactic community. We did not know if we could trust you. But my cubs have answered that question for me. If the young ones trust you, then so shall I." Minho felt the weight of her words. This was bigger than a funny story about lost cubs. This was about the future relationship between two civilizations. "I hope humanity proves worthy of that trust, High Matriarch. I believe you will. Today has shown me that humans see with more than eyes. You see with your hearts. You focus completely when helping others. You carry burdens without complaint. These are the qualities of a good ally." As if on cue, 2 small figures came running across the room. Kira and Noru had escaped their attendants again. They rushed to Minho and grabbed his legs, chirping happily. The matriarch sighed but smiled. "They have become very attached to you." Minho knelt down. The cubs immediately climbed onto his shoulders, settling into their favorite spots. Everyone in the room watched with amusement and wonder. "It seems I have acquired 2 small shadows," Minho said. "Shadows that will follow you always," the matriarch agreed. "When we return to our world, they will speak of you. The story will be told to other cubs. The human who carried them, who protected them without even knowing they were there. It will become legend." Minho looked around the room. Delegates from dozens of worlds were watching with smiles and approving gestures. What had started as the most embarrassing moment of his life was becoming something else entirely. A bridge between species, a story of trust. A small moment that might change everything. Ambassador Hyun caught his eye from across the room and nodded. She understood too. Sometimes the best diplomacy happened by accident. Sometimes it happened because 2 curious cubs decided a kind human would make a good climbing tree. Kira chirped in Minho's ear, a sound that needed no translation. She was happy. Her brother echoed the sound from the other shoulder. They were both happy. And despite everything, despite the embarrassment and the confusion and the 3 hours of unknowing transport duty, Minho was happy too. He had come to this station to help build relationships between worlds. He had just never imagined it would involve becoming a taxi service for alien children, but then again, the best stories never went according to plan. The summit continued for another week. During that time, something changed in how the other species viewed humanity. It was subtle, but real. Delegates who had been distant became friendly. Species that had been uncertain about working with humans started asking questions, wanting to know more. Ambassador Hyun noticed the shift immediately. Meetings that would have taken months to arrange were suddenly being scheduled. Trade discussions that had stalled were moving forward. And it all traced back to one incident with 2 cubs and one oblivious human. The Yovan scientist presented her findings to a small group of interested delegates. Minho was invited to attend, though he felt awkward being the subject of study. Humans possess several traits that are individually common, but rarely combined, she explained, her data pads floating around her. First, remarkable focus. When engaged in a task, they can filter out tremendous amounts of sensory data. This makes them excellent at complex problem solving. Second, endurance. Human evolution as persistence hunters has given them the ability to maintain activity for extended periods. They can carry loads relative to their size that would exhaust many species. Third, and perhaps most interesting, pack bonding capability that crosses species boundaries. Most intelligent species protect their own young. Humans protect everyone's young. They form emotional connections with beings utterly unlike themselves. A delegate raised a question. Is this trait universal among humans? Ambassador Hyun answered. Not every human shares every trait to the same degree. But yes, these patterns are common across our species. We have a saying on Earth, it takes a village to raise a child. We believe in collective responsibility for the young and vulnerable, regardless of whose child they are. The Taraxian commander spoke up. These traits would make humans valuable allies in defense situations. Your focus and endurance are tactical advantages. We prefer to use those traits for peaceful purposes, Hyun replied carefully. But yes, humans can be relied upon in difficult situations. We do not give up easily. High Matriarch Veltara had been listening quietly. Now she stood, drawing everyone's attention. The Valerian Collective has made a decision. We wish to establish a formal cultural exchange program with humanity. We believe our peoples have much to learn from each other. The room buzzed with interest. This was significant. The Valerians were one of the older and more respected civilizations in the galactic community. Their endorsement carried weight. Furthermore, the matriarch continued, I am proposing the creation of a new diplomatic position, a liaison focused specifically on helping different species understand each other's approaches to family, child rearing, and intergenerational relationships. I believe human Minho would be ideal for this role. Minho's eyes widened. He had not been expecting this. He looked at Ambassador Hyun, who was trying hard not to smile. I would be honored, High Matriarch, but I am not sure I am qualified for such an important position. You carried my cubs for 3 hours without knowing it, she replied. Then you handled the revelation with grace and humor. You earned their trust through simple kindness. You have all the qualifications that matter. Several other delegates voiced their support for the idea. The consensus was clear. What had started as an accident was becoming a new chapter in galactic diplomacy. That evening, Minho found himself alone on an observation deck looking out at the stars. He wore the guardian's drape the matriarch had given him. It had become his favorite piece of clothing, though he still was not entirely sure he deserved it. Small chirping sounds announced visitors. Kira and Noru appeared with their attendant, who looked tired but resigned. The cubs had made it clear they wanted to say goodbye to their favorite human before the Valerian delegation left tomorrow. Minho knelt down and the cubs rushed to him. They climbed onto his shoulders one last time, settling into their spots with happy chirps. They had done this every evening for the past week, and each time, Minho made sure he noticed them immediately. I am going to miss you two, he said softly. You turned my life upside down in the best possible way. The cubs did not understand his words. but they responded to his tone. Noru nuzzled against his neck. Kira wrapped her tail around his shoulder like a hug. High Matriarch Veltara entered the observation deck. I thought I might find them here. They wanted to see the stars one more time, Minho explained. The matriarch came to stand beside him, looking out at the galaxy. They will remember you, Minho. When they are grown, they will tell their own cubs about the human who carried them. You will be part of our family stories forever. And I will remember them. They taught me something important. What did they teach you? Minho thought about it. That trust can form in an instant. That kindness crosses all boundaries. That sometimes the most important moments happen when we are not even aware of them. The matriarch's translator hummed softly. Wisdom from one so young. You will do well in your new role, Minho. You have the soul for it. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars slowly turn. The cubs dozed on Minho's shoulders, warm and content. Eventually, the matriarch gestured that it was time to go. Minho carefully lifted the cubs down. They protested sleepily but went to their mother's arms. She held them close, then extended one hand to Minho in the human gesture of farewell he had taught her. They shook hands. Two beings from different worlds, connected by two small cubs and one very strange day. 3 months later, Minho stood before the Galactic Council. His new position had been formally approved. He was now the first cross-species family liaison, a role that did not exist before, but was now recognized as essential. Ambassador Hyun gave the introduction speech. We are gathered today to acknowledge a truth that one incident made clear. We need bridges between our different approaches to family and child rearing. Misunderstandings in this area can create serious problems, but understanding can create lasting bonds. Humans have a phrase, it takes a village. We believe everyone has responsibility for the young and vulnerable. This is not universal among species, but it is a valuable perspective. Aid Minho will help facilitate understanding across these differences. After the ceremony, messages of congratulations came from across the galaxy. The Taraxians sent a formal commendation. The Yovans sent data pads full of research. The Dulvari sent something that might have been congratulations, but came out as mathematical equations. But the message Minho treasured most was a simple video from the Valerian homeworld. It showed Kira and Noru, slightly bigger now, playing in a garden. They looked at the camera and waved their paws, chirping greetings. Then they both pointed at their shoulders and chirped more insistently. The message was clear. They remembered. They would always remember. Years passed. Minho's work brought him into contact with dozens of species and hundreds of families. He helped prevent misunderstandings. He facilitated cultural exchanges. He became a resource for anyone navigating the complicated waters of interspecies relationships. The story of the cubs who rode on his shoulders became famous across the galaxy. It was told in different ways by different species, but the core remained the same. A human so focused on helping others that he carried 2 cubs for hours without noticing, and the cubs who trusted him completely. The station where it all happened eventually erected a small statue in one of the common areas. It showed a simple figure with 2 small shapes on its shoulders. The plaque beneath read, in 20 different languages, just one word, trust, Kira, and Noru grew into their roles as cultural ambassadors themselves. They followed in Minho's footsteps, helping to build bridges between their people and others. They always wore ceremonial shoulder drapes like the one their mother had given Minho, a symbol of their shared experience. When Minho was old and gray, he received an invitation to return to the Valerian homeworld. High Matriarch Veltara, also older now, greeted him personally. She led him to a place of honor where Kira and Noru waited with their own cubs. The ceremony was simple. The new generation of cubs climbed onto Minho's shoulders, continuing the tradition. They were lighter than he remembered, or perhaps he was just older. But the feeling was the same. Trust, pure and simple. Later, sitting with Kira and Noru under strange stars on an alien world, Minho reflected on his life. He had come to that station as a junior aide with no real idea what he was doing, He had been chosen for a simple greeting duty, and somehow, through a series of accidents and coincidences, he had found his purpose. "Did you ever tell anyone the truth?" Kira asked through her translator. She was a diplomat now, skilled and respected. "That you really did not notice us?" Minho laughed. "Everyone knows the truth. That is what makes the story interesting. I was not some wise guardian who made a choice. I was just doing my job, focused on helping, and you two decided I was worth trusting. The magic was in your choice, not my awareness." Noru, always the quieter one, spoke up. "But you stayed calm when you found us. You handled everything perfectly. I tried my best. That is all anyone can do, really. Try your best and hope it is enough." They sat together in the garden, three beings from different worlds connected by a moment that changed everything. Around them, the universe continued its ancient dance. But here, now, there was only peace and understanding. And if sometimes Minho reached up to touch,